Welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, July 4th, 2023. Happy 4th of July. Today we are going to be talking about Ron DeSantis' new campaign strategy, an effort to reach the further right-wing parts of the Republican Party that has been so evident over the past couple of weeks as he makes this pitch to the more Make America Great Again, more Trumpy, conservative side of the base that he desperately needs to win to get to the nomination. Now, Ron DeSantis' shift comes in full contrast with many other Republicans within the Republican primary. Many of them, like Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, have really been grouped into this big chunk of the party that doesn't want Donald Trump to be the nominee for president in 2024. Together, they serve not necessarily as the anti-Trump crowd, but rather as people who are more moderate, more conservative in tradition, but more socially liberal. Now, with Ron DeSantis as the governor of Florida, I can't say he has governed as a moderate at all. But I think the perception of him across the United States has been that he's more leveled centered, he's more presidential, he comes across as Donald Trump in ideology, but not necessarily as outspoken or as non-politically correct as some people might expect or worry about for the general election on the Republican side. But Ron DeSantis' campaign has been realizing that they are, in fact, way behind. Ron DeSantis' announcement was supposed to springboard him into defeating Donald Trump or even coming within a striking distance when it came down to national polling data. Not only did neither of the two happen, Ron DeSantis is starting to lose support nationwide. It isn't just an issue of Ron DeSantis not gaining, but in fact, he's at a lower point than when he announced his campaign, and not even a lower point from before he announced his candidacy. I talk about this a lot because it's really important to note that at different periods of time, Ron DeSantis was in a much better position to announce his bid for the presidency. At one point, he was but he was down just 12.8% nationwide back in February 2023. This was around the time that you saw a surge in support for Ron DeSantis following the 2022 midterm elections when Donald Trump seemingly lost the midterms for the GOP. But that narrative was simply squashed, largely in part because Ron DeSantis could not continue that narrative. He tried to walk this fine line of appealing to the Donald Trump base, while also trying to bring in new conservative voters. And while that was working without him being in the race, by the time Donald Trump got hold of this strategy and realized that he might lose to the Republican governor, he decided to go on full offense, and as a non-candidate in the race at the time, Ron DeSantis couldn't respond, and his numbers dramatically dropped. Today, he stands around 21.5% to Donald Trump's 52.4%. It looks all but over for Ron DeSantis' campaign at defeating Donald Trump, but maybe he can build it back up. I think what we have seen so far is that Ron DeSantis now, in a new video shared by his campaign, which touted his draconian LGBTQ record, comparing himself to Donald Trump, arguing that Donald Trump is this more pro-LGBT, non-right-wing candidate, is an effort to win over a portion of the Republican base that is so diehard conservative that they will never leave Donald Trump that Ron DeSantis is trying to crack into. I think this is a last-ditch effort at winning over the most conservative voters within the Republican Party because, quite frankly, the majority of the party does not align with what this video might entail. Now, if you haven't seen the video yet, I'm actually going to play it for you because I think it is something that people should at least watch. It's very fascinating. To clear the record for Ron DeSantis' campaign, they did not produce the video, but rather reshared it. They essentially did what you see in many campaigns where there are political edits and videos made on behalf of a candidate, and they platformed it. They posted it on the DeSantis War Room, a very well-known, reputable for the campaign. I mean, this is not some type of separated account that just so happens to have the name DeSantis. This is Ron DeSantis' campaign extension for Twitter. Very similar to the Trump War Room, Obama War Room. You saw it happen. It typically takes full force in the presidential election. And this is the video that they decided to share. It's a minute long. Bear with me. If you want to watch it on 2x speed, by all means, go ahead. But I think it's worth just taking a look at to understand exactly where the rest of this video is going to go and why Ron DeSantis' campaign has really started to make many grave mistakes. Maybe it'll help them narrowly in the primary, but in the general election, attack ads like this simply aren't going to cut it.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens.
But Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower, and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In the future, can transgender women compete in Miss Universe?
Yes.
Make America great again.
I cannot think of anything more horrifying.
It really has shut down drag.
Just produced some of the harshest, most draconian laws that literally threaten trans existence.
Congratulations, Ron DeSantis. Mission accomplished. You win.
I feel like I'm a teacher showing you guys a video that is really, really funny, I think, in the sense of why in the world would you share this video, right? I've seen this as something that shows Ron DeSantis in this, again, last-ditch effort to win over the more conservative voters in the Republican Party, because he is right. His campaign aides are right. They are way behind. But what this attack ad does is essentially, one, draws a huge juxtaposition between him and Donald Trump. And as this got elevated, I mean, this ad is everywhere. You see it on Axios, you see it on ABC News, you see it on MSNBC, NBC, CNN. I mean, everyone is talking about this video because, for one, it is very appalling that any sort of, major presidential contender, especially like one like Ron DeSantis, puts out a video like that. It's crazy to think about. But number two, it is really just showing the desperation in some senses of the DeSantis campaign, drawing this juxtaposition between him and Donald Trump being perceived in this video as more sensible, more centrist, more in line with the American public on the issue of LGBT rights, does not do a service to Ron DeSantis anywhere outside of maybe just 5 to 10 to 15% of the Republican electorate. So what we have seen so far is that Ron DeSantis knows what he's doing right now isn't working, and now is trying to go down this very, very right-wing, trail, right? Going down this pathway that is only going to land him unelectability in the general election. Now, I do want to say that, number one, I think that video is absolutely just wrong to put out on a campaign perspective. If you're looking at this from a policy standpoint, if you're looking at this from a political consultant standpoint, you're looking at this from an American standpoint, you realize that all this does is divide, right? When 71% of the nation believes that same-sex couples should be recognized, when only 50% of the country would identify with the Democratic Party, you realize that there's a significant chunk of this country that aligns with the left wing on this issue in particular. I think outside of the issue of electability, the video is just standardly appalling. I think it's something that many Republicans and Democrats were right to condemn. It's not something that you want to put out as a major contender. And it also makes Ron DeSantis seem more extreme than Donald Trump, which plays into my point of electability. We're not going to continue talking about why I think personally, or many people, as you've seen from many Republicans nationwide condemning Ron DeSantis' campaign for this, why we think that it's wrong to have put out. But what I do think is that we really do need to talk about as well is this drag that this will have, no pun intended, this drag it will have on the Ron DeSantis campaign for the general election, should he make it through the primary, right? You see, what Ron DeSantis has enjoyed for so long is the American public, quite frankly, just doesn't know much about him. All that they know about him is what the media has put out, and fairly put, it doesn't paint him in the worst light. He has a high approval rating in a swing state, recently won re-election by 20 percentage points in one of the most competitive states in the entire country, or so it seems, winning the largest margin of victory for a Republican in decades upon decades, which tells us that Ron DeSantis, at least in Florida, is doing something right. And for a while, he was viewed as this more sensible Republican, as the more electable Republican. Again, his governance style doesn't align with that discussion about him being a moderate, but it still very much validates the feelings that many Republicans might have had, independents or Democrats might have had, that Ron DeSantis is less dangerous to the United States. That if they had to choose between the two, they would prefer Ron DeSantis because Donald Trump has proven that he's extreme, that he has done things beyond standard means that should not be becoming, that are not becoming of a president, or a president who deserves re-election. But That is going to change. What this ad did is just the start of what the Democratic Party will do with its opposition research and its condemning of this video. I mean, to have this out there before you even make a public stance on the issue shows everyone what you are, right? I think what we have seen so far from the DeSantis campaign is this standard run-of-show politics that might not be working for them, but this is certainly not the way to go. As I said, he has enjoyed, quite frankly, the benefit of being unknown. And that seems to be a bad thing. Because as more people know him, for example, in the state of New Hampshire, as more and more voters see Ron DeSantis, they like him less. As he has gone on the campaign trail within the state of New Hampshire, his numbers have begun to deteriorate. The more that voters see of him, the less they like him. And that's exactly what's going to happen on the national level. New Hampshire isn't just this one particular case. This is how it's going to go on the national level unless the DeSantis campaign changes something drastically. And this doesn't help them one bit. He can't come out here and argue to the American public that he aligns with them on most issues, but may disagree on issues that are less important to the American public. He'll try to put the economy and healthcare at the forefront of the campaign, but what we have seen is that doesn't always work. Republicans tried it in 2022, and when the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, abortion became a central issue in the 2022 midterms. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the Christian web designer in the First Amendment case here, we have seen an already walk back from the Supreme Court against LGBT protections, removing this protection for a protected class as defined by prior Supreme Court cases and many lower-level courts has set a new precedent that depending on who's in power, depending on the laws in place, the Supreme Court has validated these efforts, that people have the opportunity, that creative businesses can refuse same-sex work, meaning they can refuse a same-sex couple from anything should it disagree with their religious beliefs. This is the first time we have seen this happen in a Supreme Court case in quite some time. And what it tells us is that there is a beginning of a walkback, that issues like gay marriage might actually be relitigated, which will make an issue like gay marriage, similar to abortion, a prime topic for discussion and voting in 2024. And this video that Ron DeSantis has put out really does not align with the majority of the nation. Pitting yourself against Donald Trump as the more draconian, using that language, even seeing this, I cannot believe anybody approved this to go out on official campaign channels. I would understand maybe if they aligned with it privately and wanted to reshare it on their personal accounts, retweeting it, liking it, whatever it might be. But what happens here when it comes from the official campaign account is that it becomes an extension of Ron DeSantis. Now Democrats will have a legitimate attack against Ron DeSantis, painting him as this anti-LGBT, anti-abortion, anti-American candidate that quite frankly will do well amongst the American public. Because as Democrats made abortion a central issue in 2022, they will make LGBT rights a central issue in 2023. Because of the Supreme Court, because of candidates like Ron DeSantis, we are seeing a walk back in terms of LGBT protections and opinion nationwide that is not going to help him in the general election, but rather push voters more to the left. We have seen this already happen as recently as the last midterm elections, and Republicans would be, quite frankly, foolish to try to make this a prime issue to vote on because, again, 71% of the country aligns with the Democrats. Now, I'm not going to try to build this narrative that voters will only care about it, but it's a supplement. It will be one of many issues that they vote on. And again, abortion did make all the difference in 2022. Had Roe v. Wade not been overturned, I do believe that Republicans would have won control of the House by significantly more, would have flipped control of the United States Senate. So the Supreme Court, the repercussions of that were very, very significant electorally, and I think they might be again this time, especially when you have candidates out here promoting videos like this, especially when your campaign manager is arguing with notable Republicans saying that they don't believe that Pride Month should be federally recognized. It just gets worse and worse when you really should have said nothing at all. This might be Ron DeSantis' viewpoint, but it's not an electable one, and that is the problem. The American public votes entirely, so it seems, on perception. And that really is just a product of the way we over-sensationalize our elections, the way videos like that are produced and then put forward further. I mean, that is just really hitting the point of many problems that we've seen with the American electoral system that does not incentivize true discussions about politics and policy and the issues that matter to a lot of voters. And I think what we have seen from Ron DeSantis' campaign is that they aren't aware of where the public aligns on many of these topics, which is exactly why they continue and continue to lose. I mean, even painting Donald Trump as the more moderate and sensible Republican is not what Ron DeSantis' campaign should be trying to do. I think that video really has had no benefit for Ron DeSantis, but rather a lot of detriment, a lot of fallout from support that they might have received had Ron DeSantis been the nominee. The log cabin Republicans, which stand as the LGBTQ wing of the Republican Party, have already denounced this ad. And I can imagine that come the general election, they would find a lot of difficulty endorsing like someone like Ron DeSantis on the national level. I mean, he has alienated way more people than necessary because alienation is inevitable in a general election. But this already pushes out a significant chunk of the country. And I think what we will find in future polls as the public is made more aware of Ron DeSantis, similar to how it is in New Hampshire, his numbers will continue to drop. Now, I do believe at this point in time he is more electable than Donald Trump, but that isn't saying much. The fact is, the top two contenders here lose to Joe Biden routinely on national polls, on statewide polls, and that's a problem. While Ron DeSantis might have the leg up over Donald Trump, there are plenty of candidates in that single-digit range that could perform a hell of a lot better. But it's because of the way they have presented themselves. Number one, Donald Trump with all of his pitfalls. Now Ron DeSantis building more pitfalls for himself. I mean, it is absolutely incomprehensible that the top two Republican contenders for a president with an approval rating down 12 points nationwide cannot be leading at this point, when people like Mitt Romney were doing well in polls when Obama was up 5 points. It is really just the perfect storm is building for the Democratic Party to win in 2024, despite practically everything being stacked against them. And it's because of candidates like Donald Trump and now like Ron DeSantis that are handing the general election to the Democratic Party because of their extremist viewpoints and the way that they campaigned that used to be very separate, very different, that even convinced people like myself that Ron DeSantis was this unchallengeable Republican, that no one could beat him in a general election, and Joe Biden would lose to him should they get that far. I truly believe, based off the content that they've been putting out, the way they have been campaigning, Ron DeSantis, I do not think, is palatable to the average American in a way that he once was back in November, December, January 2022 and 2023. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.